This conference will now be recorded.
So the Board of Commissioners meeting for Lake Stevens Sewer, January 26, 2021 at 4:01 p.m. We're in session. We're going to go into a utility committee meeting, which is a joint meeting between representatives of the sewer district and city representatives. So I'll go ahead and move on over to the utility meeting. Appears that we have Councilmember Peter Shagan, Councilmember Tangent, Mayor Gailey, Commissioners Stevenson, Commissioners Koshi, myself, respective administrators for both the district and the city, along with the public here to join us at this utility committee meeting this afternoon. So call to order. We do have a roll call. I'm just going to read our usual little caveat that we usually do as far as what I do with the regular board meetings. So I think it's just kind of important to be able to go ahead and say that too. So commissioners, council members, staff, and citizens, since this is a remote meeting, some initial comments are appropriate. As required by the governor's series of proclamations beginning on March 24, 2020, the Lake Stevens Sewer District is holding its commissioner meetings, which in this case, it's a utility meeting with our city partners, remotely using the GoToMeeting platform. While this is not our norm, we are glad to be able to ensure the continuity of business operations. Members of the public are participating. We are very grateful for your support and patience while we work through this interim way of doing business. If members of the public, the members of the public that have been invited to join via this virtual meeting format through GoToMeetings, we will handle the public comment section on the agenda in this fashion. First, the comments or questions that were received either through the sewer commissioners, district's customer service office, or through the city of Lake Stevens if they received any sufficiently in advance of the meeting will be read during the public meeting forum. Secondly, during the meeting, anyone wishing to comment during the public forum may use the chat box feature and you'll be provided with the opportunity to comment. So with that being said, I did do roll call already, so I think we can go ahead and start the meeting. So we will start at item number 3, which is action items. The first thing is the approval of the meeting minutes for December 17th, 2020. So I don't know if each of the sides have had the opportunity to review those and make any comments, questions, concerns, or changes.
Yes, Commissioner Lawrence, and I would ask that we table these minutes to a further meeting. They're extensive, and I don't know as though they accurately reflect the meeting that took place.
I would like to table them too, till we have time to go through the meeting minutes and make sure that they are what was accurately described and talked about in the meeting.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Commissioner Koshi.
Yeah, as I was saying, when were the meeting minutes set out? How much, opportunity has folks had a chance to read them?
I just got my copy today.
Okay.
Not
I'm fine
that
with taking the time to review them. I've read through them; they look pretty good to me, but no problem taking more time from my perspective.
Yeah, no problem. I want to make sure everybody's comfortable with them. If we don't get them to today, we will carry them over to the next meeting and approve them at that time. So it is imperative that everybody is comfortable with them. I know we have a pretty full agenda and we have limited time because I know that the council side of the house does have a meeting tonight, if I am correct. So I do not want to be holding everybody up and extending our meeting any longer with that. So we can then just move on down to item B under the action items. There's a franchise fee and a utility agreement fee. And there's a request under 4.4, 4.7, 7.4, the increase in the utility fee, agreement fee, and stormwater billing. So I will turn that over to staff to kind of educate both sides and we will go from there.
Jean, do you want to take this one?
I can. I was actually hoping that Barb would speak to it. I know that she's been in conversation with yourself on it.
Just turning my mic on. Sorry about that. Yes, actually, so this is something that's in your utility agreement that has been in there for many years. I know when the sewer district took over the city's sewer, there was a fee in there that was approximately $75,000 a year, and this was for activities that related to the sewer. We were still, in 2005, we were still taking, collecting fees, sewer fees, and then remitting them to the sewer district. That occurred for a couple of years. As you can see in your packet that was sent out, district staff has provided the utility agreement fee historical payments, which is kind of what I'm looking at. It hadn't changed for many years. It was $109,980 for many years. We did start looking at this in 2013, 2014, and started actually looking at how much time was spent by city staff in whether it was looking at comp plans and working together with Public Works, and we started reducing that fee down a bit more as the sewer district was dealing with their own maintenance and operations. The city wasn't as involved. It looks like starting in 2021, we won't even be receiving envelope payments for the sewer district anymore. I think that was actually something that's been kind of coming on for a long time. Right now, the citizens in Lake Stevens, or up until recently, they were able to drop off payments at the city at a couple other places, and it really does make sense to consolidate that and have them actually either mail them in or drop them off at the district. It doesn't make a lot of sense for additional staff to run around picking those up. So at this point, we have not looked at the specific amount of time that staff spends working on joint operations of the utility agreement. In the last couple of years, all we have used this funding for was some very minimal staff time and then surface water management fees. And since this year, our surface water management fees are actually above that $15,000. That is why I brought up a potential increase in the fee. It has been $15,000 for the last few years. I did bring that up as Mariah responded. That is technically a utility fee that we could just bill an invoice for, and so that is an option. I know City Administrator Brazel and I did discuss whether or not we were just going to go ahead and invoice surface water fees for the properties with lift stations and the wastewater treatment plant on them directly to the sewer district, and what we would do with the utility agreement fee. We had decided, since we were in the middle of merging, negotiating, we would just go ahead and leave it at the same amount and then just basically use the utility agreement fee for surface water fees. But we're open for discussion on that. If you would prefer us just to bill those directly as surface water fees and then renegotiate the utility fee, we can do that. Whatever is the committee's pleasure.
I think this one's pretty easy. I mean, we should be paying the city based on whatever the cost support there is that's clear that we agree to, you know, in terms of administrating the contract as it has been and as it's articulated in the contract. If there's other fees that are appropriate, you know, for the land the district has, those should be billed separately and not trying to bundle into this. That would be my preference.
Dan, you're muted.
So I just want to point out, per the agreement, it does take a vote with the quorum of all 6 committee members in order to change the fee. And so should the committee want to change, we should take that vote.
So would the recommendation be that we separately bill for surface water fees? I did get that an updated amount that I could send over. It is $15,420.15 for 2021. Those do actually generally get billed by the Snohomish County. They get billed on property taxes with the exception of city-owned properties, and so we would bill this one directly. But these are the numbers that we get from Snohomish County. So if we did that, we could bill that separately and then take the matter of the utility agreement fee separately. however you wish.
That'd be my preference. Just keep it completely clean per the contract.
Why don't you make a motion, Kevin?
Well, I mean, does anything have to, do we need a motion? I mean, I guess,
According to 7 point whatever, 7.4, we're supposed to take a vote.
well, 7.4 is supposed to take a vote if we're going to change the fee. I'm not a fan of changing the fee, so I prefer, I don't think there's a need to take a vote. Is there?
Well, for clear direction of staff, why don't we go ahead and do it?
Okay, I make a motion that you bill the surface water management fees that Snohomish County has identified as for district-owned properties directly to the district, and have the district make payment.
I second that.
So it has been moved and seconded on the motion. Any further discussion by any of the board members or anything staff want to add to it? Not
Just to
hearing
clarify,
any.
so we will build the $15,420 and the utility agreement fee will stay the same.
Correct.
Okay, so it's been clarified. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Not seeing any wave me down or make any motions or talk. I'll go and call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I'm assuming everybody said aye. I didn't hear all of them. Nays or noes? Abstains? It has passed. Thank you, everyone. Pull the agenda back up here really quick. Those are the only two things there. So we're going to move on down to the public forum. I'll check with the respective organization lead. Hello, did we get any?
We did not receive any comments prior to the meeting.
Okay, thank you. And I'll look to council or the administrator, city administrator, Gene. Any indication that anybody responded through the city with comments or anything?
Nothing.
Okay. So this is an opportunity at this time, not getting it. We do have some public members that are on the call with us. So it is an opportunity for you to speak on anything that the Utility Commission might want to know. It doesn't necessarily have to be right on that, but if you do want to speak, you can unmute your mic or hit the chat feature and send something, and then just identify yourself with a name and an address, and we can open it up. So I'm not seeing anything pop up on the chat feature. Taking that as we have nobody. So let's go ahead and move on down since nobody from the public wanted to say anything. We'll move into number 5, which is information sharing. First thing on the agenda is item A, which is annexation under 4.3. And it's the Southeast Interlocal Annexation. So I'll turn this over to staff.
I think the only thing to add was that the joint meeting has been set for March 9th at 6 p.m. and that's with the board, the city council, and the county council.
Perfect. I don't know if any that may have changed or not. Not seeing anybody indicate that. So we'll just make sure that at least from each side that we'll get a calendar invite so we can at least show up if there are questions that need to be asked by the county council, because I know that they have not been part of the process other than it does end up going towards them. So that being said, if there's nothing else on that, we will move on down to item B, which is rates and charges under 7.6. The items under that are, the first one is reserve fund assurance, and then rate stabilization fund. History of this account, such as if it was funded by ratepayers or loan. So I'll open that up for discussion with the utility committee.
This is Mickey. I need permission to share the screen so I can show you what I put together.
Okay, I think Mariah has controls on the.
I just made you the presenter.
Okay, can everybody see that?
Could you zoom in a little bit more, Mickey?
That better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So we looked at our beginning of year forecast, and we're going out 10 years. And in the beginning of year forecast, we show a rate increase in 2022, 2024, and again in 2026. If we go ahead and pay off the SRF loan, L110012 with our money from the rate stabilization fund, the principal amount owing on that is $3,537,375. We could then keep our rates at $86 for another year, and we could delay those future rate increases by 1 year. So 2022 would be $86, 2023 would be $90, and 2025 would be $95, and then the $98 would come in 2027. We also put in doing a $2 per month rate transfer from the M&O to capital. Let's see, right down here you can see that. With the paying off the SRF loan and the $2 per month going to the capital fund, our operating reserve in 2030 would have a shortfall of $1.9 million. And that's a shortfall. So we still have cash. The end of year operating reserve would be 600, but it'd be $1.9 million lower than our operating reserve. We go negative for the first time in 2027 of our reserve by 96,000. So we'd have to look at if we don't get enough monthly ratepayers coming in to offset that, we might have to do another rate increase later on. But that's so far out, we don't want to really quite take a look at that yet. The other variable in that is the plant upgrade in 2025. I did a $36 million loan at 4% just to get an idea of what it's going to cost for those monthly payments. And that's what you see highlighted in blue on the debt payments. That's with that treatment plant upgrade. And I know we're looking at trying to find a way to not have to do that large of a project, and we're working on that. So hopefully that number won't be there, be that large. Does anybody have any questions on that?
I think one other important thing to note is for our growth forecast, we use a very conservative number of about 100 and what was the estimate on this? And we've exceeded that by at least double the past 2 years. So the revenue forecast isn't necessarily indicative of what we've seen the past few years.
John, is that 170? What is that? 179. What is that?
It's 179 new customers as well as connection fees paid. So the connection fees go directly to capital, and the new ratepayers go into the operating expense or operating revenues.
So your calculation was 179 new hookups every year through this time period?
They actually start going down. They decreased when you get towards the last, I think the last 4 years, because we don't have that many, that much buildable land left unless something changes.
Yep. Yeah, we took the buildable lands report that the city issued a couple of years ago and kind of divided up the remaining buildable lands into, divided that by years and kind of the developments that were already on the books to come up with that forecast and drop off the growth as kind of when we see the projects that are on the books start to drop off. So.
Okay, Roger, thank you.
So Mickey, is it a true statement that by taking the rate stabilization fund and applying them to one of the loans and in advance paying it, that takes monies and places them where, when those monies were originally collected, it's placing them where we said they were going to be placed. And what the result of that is the that decreases our OPEX expense year over year, because we don't have to come up with that OPEX expense to pay the principal and interest on that loan. And in those savings allows us to postpone at least 1 year of rate increases to our constituents. Is that a fair summary of what you just shared?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can you give us a little background on the rate stabilization fund as to how that came about? And I guess I mean, that's part one of my question. Part two of my questions would be, why, I believe it was last month, Commissioner Koshi, I think it was last month, and I think it's reflected in the minutes, you had proposed refunding that money to the ratepayers. Is that correct?
Yeah, so do you want me to take that first part and kind of bleed into the second?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, sure.
Okay,
Yep.
And certainly the staff, the one challenge with electeds coming in and out, the staff's the continuity in terms of kind of the source of truth. So if anything I say here, you know, isn't consistent with what the staff understands, please feel free to correct me. But as a resident at the time that we were preparing, resident at the time when we put together the unification agreement, and at that time, the district was preparing to build the plant, and we knew it was going to be expensive. And the commissioners during that time period made the decision to start advancing rates faster than was required for kind of the existing run rate of OPEX, in anticipation of collecting additional monies to try to get a head start on the plant. So try to smooth out, if you will, the rates, so you wouldn't just, you know, come along at a low rate and then bam, the plant is there and we have all this interest exposure and, you know, there's this huge rate increase. And so they started expanding rates earlier than were necessary to try to get ahead of the anticipated cost of the plant. And so those were done. And those monies that were collected in advance of the plant, that were going to go to the plant, went into a fund called the Rate Stabilization Fund. And those monies were set aside for one of two purposes. Either one was to pay down the principal on the loans, or not to have to take out as much of a loan balance in the financing of the plant. So that was one source of or use of the monies that was stated. The other one was to use those monies to instead of having to expand rates faster or in larger chunks, to use some of that, you know, have the rates not cover all the operating expense of the district, and use those monies that have been pre-collected to fill in the gaps, if you will, to more slowly raise rates over a period of time. So that was the philosophy and what was articulated to ratepayers when the rates started to go up and advance the plant. The total monies that were collected were around $8 million that were in that fund.
Was any of that borrowed?
What's that?
Was any of that $8 million borrowed?
No.
No, those monies that were put in the fund were from ratepayers, and, you know, in that advanced rate. Now, you can come back in and say, well, there was a decision somewhere along the line of when those loans were being taken out, right, that we didn't pay down, we didn't, you know, we borrowed money to build the plant. That $8 million could have been used at that time. It was chose not to. It was chose to be set aside and in reserve to either to smooth out rates, or at some time in the future to pay down principal.
Kevin,
So
can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah,
sure.
It was actually $14 million that went into the rate stabilization fund, and it was a combination of connection fees and the rate set asides that built the rate stabilization fund. When the housing market tanked in 2008, and we are already committed to building the treatment plant, when we got towards the end of the plant, we had to come up with more money than we had expected to. So we actually went out for 30 million in bonds to cover that expense without using that money that was set aside and leaving it there so that we could stabilize the rates until the economy picked itself back up again. Because by 2008, we were supposed to have another 800 ERUs that didn't come in because, or by 2010, between 2008 and 2010, that didn't come in because of the housing market crash. So the commissioners elected to keep the rate stabilization fund to help offset the increase in rates until the market turned around and we had more houses being built and we could come together where the M&O covered the debt and the maintenance operation expense.
So let me do a quick summary. There's 14 million total. 6 million were used at that time to stabilize rates. That gets us down to 8 million. Half of that amount approximately was used at the time of the bond refinancing a year or two ago, where we paid down principal in that bond refinance. And what we're talking about here is the last 4 million that we could either use to stabilize rates or to further pay down principal. Is that a fair summary, Mickey?
Yes, that is. And we do have a resolution that the rate stabilization fund can only be used to pay debt.
Yeah, okay.
So just to clarify, just so I get this right in my mind, it's, I guess, not categorized as borrowed money, but in effect it was generated, or a portion of it was generated through the sale of bonds for the capital facility.
No, it would
not totally
no,
used.
I don't think that's accurate. It'd be like if I made 100 grand, this year, and I took out a mortgage of 200 grand, and I have and I have 50,000 in savings. Did that 50,000 savings come from my income, or did that 50,000 savings come from me taking out a $200,000 mortgage? So there were ratepayer monies that were paid into those funds, either through connection fees or through advancing rates faster than was required at the time to cover OPEX.
So I'm trying to understand then, so the 8 million plus the 6 million, none of that was borrowed?
No.
I thought you said it was generated through a $14 million bond sale.
No.
No.
We had money, the 14 million came from the connection fees that were paid in, plus the rate set aside money that we were setting aside for the future expense of the treatment plant. In 2008, when the housing market crashed, we were already committed to doing the plant. We came in 2010 and we needed more money for the plant than what we had. So we went out for bonds to cover the final cost of the treatment plant. And the commissioners decided at that time to leave that rate stabilization fund money there to help offset the rates, because we were missing so many ERUs between 2008 and 2010 due to the housing market crash. Otherwise, we would, if the housing market didn't crash, we would have had more than the 14 million, and we would have gone ahead and not taken out that debt, just use that money to pay for the remainder of the treatment plant costs.
Okay.
In your agenda pocket was a memo that I wrote that has all of this information in it.
Yeah, we did see that. I did review that.
Hey, Mickey, I'd like to just thank you for the clarification. What wasn't adding up for me was the $8 million figure that I think was talked about the last time we spoke about this. But then looking at your memorandum, it's roughly $9.5 million spent, and then we were saying that we have 4 million left, and so my math wasn't adding up to 8 million. So your clarification that the rate stabilization fund actually started with 14 million makes more sense.
Yeah.
Of which, to carry this a little bit further, Kevin, the 3.5 that's left in that fund,
There's
correct?
4.3 million left. The 3.5 is the SRF loan amount that we like to use the funds to pay that loan off.
Okay.
So the money left in that account was what you were looking to potentially refund?
To pay off.
Well, it's either one of two things, right? Either I guess there's three avenues to use those monies, and I think the simplest and cleanest one is to pay off the loan that's close, right? That isn't encumbered with requirements for us to keep it longer or whatever, no prepayment issues or whatever. That's the cleanest way to go forward. The other two options would be to use those monies and just not increase rates. So where you saw it, Mickey's, tentative schedule or forecast on the 90 and 95, you could just we could hold back on doing those. I personally would, I don't like artificially covering OPEX. I like the rates to cover the OPEX. I think that's a much better policy position to have, but that would be an option. And the other option would be to refund it directly to the ratepayer. And now there could be some problems with that because you start getting to, the ratepayers who paid that necessarily in aren't exactly the same ratepayers as you're paying it back out to, because we got 15 years, 16 years of time that's passed. So there might be some concerns there. So I think that the cleanest, and I would prefer not to spend the legal expense to go try to ferret that one out at this point. I think the cleanest one would be to pay off the loan of the 3.5 and then leave maybe end up with 800K or something like that, left in that fund. And as we get closer to having all the debt paid off, that could be used in final payment or whatever at that time.
Hey, Mickey, what was the annual savings for paying off the loan you want to pay off first with?
Let me grab that.
And I don't think you need to share at this point, Mickey. If you want, we can go back to the big screens
Okay.
and the pictures, just so you don't, have to worry about bouncing your desktop or sharing multiple files.
Yeah, just ballpark me. I don't need.
I'm looking, just a moment.
I'd be curious as to what the rate is on that too.
I believe that loan is at 2.7%. And it would save. Sorry.
You're good.
Some of my bigger spreadsheets take a little bit to upload with Excel. So we would have an interest savings of $628,352.63.
And that yearly payment is what, Mickey?
The yearly payment is $362,237.16.
Okay. And it's time to how much longer is on that bond?
This goes out to 2032, and this actual interest rate is actually the 2.8 interest rate.
Any other questions by utility on these two?
So you're looking at a $36 million plant upgrade or capital needs, is that correct? Am I understanding that correct?
From the comp plan, yes, that's what the last comp plan said. And this next round that we're doing in the comp plan, they're looking at alternative ways to not have to do that full upgrade in 2025.
Gotcha. So in 2025, theoretically, you're looking at 36 million or hopefully under that. But then the thought would be not to save those monies to help assist with that. You'd go out for new funding for that. Is that correct?
It would depend on how we could phase it in smaller increments for lower cost. So it's kind of really all up in the air until we get our comp plan back and look at all of our options.
And what's the interest rate on bonds current, or what we're looking at right now? What's the interest rate on most of that stuff?
I don't know what the current interest is on bonds currently.
Okay.
The last bond refinance, though, is in the 2s.
Right. And we're in the 2s on this. I was just curious if, putting this money to pay off debt when you have 2025, $36 million coming out is maybe the solid play on this, or keeping some funds in reserve to maybe take care of some of that as well. Gives you some flexibility.
Hey, Mickey, that 4 million, what is it? What's that sitting in and what's the return on it?
Say that one more time, Brett, I didn't catch that.
The 4 million, the rate stabilization fund, is it sitting in a interest-bearing account or anything like that?
It is at the Snohomish County in the county pool. I'm not sure what their current rate is, but it's more than the state pool because it's in a long term. I have to let them know 30 days in advance when I want to remove money because it's a long-term investment.
Okay. And when we talked earlier about rate increases and a possible $36 million more debt in 2025, those rate increases take account for that additional debt, or would we need to increase rates even more?
It depends on the number. So the forecast is a working document. It's constantly changing. When we have more ERUs come in, like this year so far for January, we've got 46 new ERUs that have been paid for already for January. So that's 46 for the entire year, which we like them when they come in early because we get the full years of payment. But the forecast is only accounting for 179 for like the next 4 or 5 years, and then it starts dropping after that. So if we get another, like last year we had 308 or something, if we get another like that, then that brings more money in sooner. So that decreases what we have, our deficit is later on in that forecast. And I don't have the 2020 actual numbers in yet, which will, of course, change our start of year cash for 2021. I won't have those until probably the end of February, get all that information in there.
Right, Mickey, but my question is when I look at this sheet of proposed rate increases over the next through 2027, is there $36 million extra put into the debt budget in 2025? And does that rate increase account for helping to pay that down?
Those rate increases do account for some of that. The 36 million in 2025, what the comp plan says for the new treatment plant, is reflected in the debt service that's highlighted in blue. That includes, I just did a quick 36 million at 4%. So that's actually a high number of increased debt amount.
So the short answer is yes. It's the additional OPEX to cover the 36 million that's in there for CapEx is baked into the forecast.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and so just a couple other comments on that. One would be, I'm highly confident it's not going to be 36 million. So we'll get into that, but with the technology that's out there and so forth, not going to be anywhere close to that would be my guess. Secondly, even if it was 36 million, I am reluctant to continue to hang on to $4 million of ratepayer money that was told 15 years ago that was going to be used for the initial plant. I think, as municipal organizations like we are, I think too often, the public trust is really important. And if we tell them that what we're going to do is we're going to use this you know, ultimately for principal. It should be used for principal, and it should be used for principal payments on the original acquisition, not on some future, maybe, you know, it's good for us later type of thing. So, anyway, so it's baked in. I think it'll be a lot less, and I don't know that it would change how I would encourage the commission to move forward on it.
I think one other thing to add is, I mean, we looked at 5-year based on the comp plan before and where we were at. The buildable lands report that the city holds, I mean, do you guys see a large 20, 30,000 person increase in the next 4 years coming into the city? I mean, if we're not going to meet population targets, we're not going to build something that there's no need to. I mean, that'd be ludicrous to spend money like that. So I think that it takes into account that that's where we really have to look at what buildable lands are left and what the population targets are going to be coming in at. I think when a lot of this was put into play many years ago with Snohomish County Tomorrow and a lot of them, there were some very aggressive, I think, ideas of what population would be growing in this entire county and where they would be allocated to these cities. So, you know, we started off well, as we all know. The economy's been roaring pretty good for years, but I think that if we really kind of look at Lake Stevens in itself and what is left within the growth management area of the UGA, I don't know, unless you guys start building 4 or 5 story buildings, that we're going to meet a target that is going to need that sizable of an upgrade. Will there be an upgrade? There probably is going to be a slight in the future, but I think that could possibly be handled talking with our assistant general manager and engineering, that technology is on our side. And what we bought years ago as a community is upgradable, and we can save dollars and cents by upgrading that way versus building the next phase.
Just to sharpen that point, if we build out all the buildable lands, I think, what was the number, Gary, 2,000, 3,000, somewhere in there? I mean, it's debatable on what's wet and what's not and infilling and all that, but it's that kind of number, isn't it?
2,000.
Okay, so 2,000, if we built all those 2,000 homes tomorrow, Jonathan, could our plant handle it?
We've got, that would be roughly 12,000 new people, and I think the plant was designed for about 45,000. So yeah.
So,
and the treatment plant 2025 date is more of an earmark. We know that eventually it's going to have to happen, but because growth forecasts haven't really matched what is really happening, we've kept it at that 2025 mark, even though chances are it'll go out till past 2033 if we do have to do the big upgrade. But we're looking at smaller incremental upgrades to get the plant slowly re-rated for capacity that'll buy us 10 years worth of growth rather than build out conditions right away. So yeah, we're looking at that now.
I mean, the goal from the commission is, and we'll get to this in a later item though, but for the agreement, 2033, ideally we hand a plant and facility over debt-free, which I think would be the only one in the state of Washington to be able to do that. So that's kind of the ideal to strive towards. And so those smaller incremental plant upgrades, we can absorb those with existing OpEx or within existing rate structures or rate plans. That's going to be that's where we want to go, not go drop another $20 million bond at whatever rate.
Okay, if we have no more questions on that, let's move on down to item C under number 5, which is going to be personnel under 7.7, employee retention. If staff wants to start, or if there's members of the utility committee that want to comment.
Who put this on the agenda?
This is a requested holdover from last meeting.
Yeah, so one of my 3 manifestos that I shared last time I got together, this was one of them. And so there was a request was to give some time for our city partners to really be able to understand and absorb that, and wanted to share it in writing. I believe we forwarded it to you a day or so after the meeting, so you've had a chance to take a look at it. I think this one's more of a welcome any comments or feedback you all may have, or any recommendations you may have, but no planned presentation other than what's already been shared.
Well, I'll chime in, I guess, and I would say, Kevin, in your experience of mergers and so forth, would you, have you ever seen anything like this that you're proposing?
All the time.
To the lengths?
It's actually pretty light. I mean, in the corporate world, and it depends on what side, whether you're on the receiving or the giving side of it, but
12 years from now?
Certainly retention plans are, well, the 12 years from now is unique to this contract. So there's no, nothing spurious about that. A lot of the corporate stuff is certainly many times much more significant than what I shared in that document. And again, there's no cost to ratepayers on this at all, right? As long as the employees are treated consistent. So.
This comes
Any
across.
other questions or comments by anybody?
This comes across as extremely unusual to me. Putting something like this in play, especially as we're moving forward with an assumption. So for me, I think that's something that would be good for, someone like Jean and Mariah. And if we're working with a firm to help us work this out, that would be something I think they would be better at working through and putting something like that together.
Yeah, I think as you can imagine, Marcus, there's a very different set of views on the ordinance and so forth. So we've passed back the friendly documents and the ordinance and our resolution and so forth. So I wouldn't paint it as, we're going to be a combined entity in 90 days necessarily. I think there's certainly, you should anticipate some kind of response from the district. We're still working through some of those details, but so again, it doesn't change anything relative to ratepayer. And again, just to pick up a couple of the points that are in there, people go into working for municipalities. One of the advantages is certainly the pay, and many times, in fact, most times, is not at par with the corporate world. But one of the advantages that there is there's a level of stability and certainty. And one of the unfortunate outcomes of us going back and forth around merge, not merge, we'd like you to merge earlier and so forth, is it injects uncertainty into our employee base. And as we've shared with this forum and elsewhere multiple times, one of the ways we've been able to achieve the positive financial results at the district is through our employees being very engaged and frankly very accountable, and having a culture where the employees actually hold themselves accountable in many corners of it. I don't want to lose that, and injecting uncertainty starts chipping away at some of that. And so this is the way to not impact ratepayers at all, and to be able to provide them a level of certainty while we go through our political work around merger or not merger, and is ordinances valid, or is is our resolutions valid, or what. As we go through that, this injects some certainty into that and helps keep them locked in and continuing to do the good work that they've done. So that's the intent behind it. And again, it's ratepayer neutral. So
I understand.
But again, I'm open for comments and any recommendations you may or may not have about it.
I hear you on that. Gene, maybe you can clarify for me. Isn't there an RCW or something that says that that through this that they keep their jobs and so forth? Isn't there something I remember hearing on that?
You're correct, Marcus.
So specifically to our admin staff that is not represented, what RCW provides them assurance? Because my research says they have no assurance.
Who's they? Because you talked about the staff and
Our admin staff. So our admin staff, is about one third of our organization, roughly, slightly more than that. Not represented. So the RCW, I believe, goes to represented staff. So they're not currently represented. So I'm just curious if you've got the, you're quoting RCW, which one helps address non-represented staff?
And I
Kevin,
don't know, looking at the meetings, Kevin, you specified that.
I didn't.
Right. So I think what Gene's referring to is the union employees are specifically covered by RCW. And I would agree, the non-represented employees are not.
Okay.
But that's not how you presented that. You presented it for all the employees.
I did. Yeah.
So I don't know how many non-represented employees you have, but I'm assuming in the office there's probably 10 to 15.
Yeah, in that
8,
number. Yeah,
somewhere in there.
About right. Yeah.
Yeah. So roughly half your total staff. And I don't know as though the operation of the sewer district would allow us just to not have those people. You folks handle billing, you handle everyday occurrences and so forth. The city doesn't have that capability right at this point. So I don't know. If you folks are getting the feeling of a house cleaning going on or something, that's not the case. I don't see how we would do things without those employees.
And then I guess in that case, this type of, move forward or potential resolution wouldn't matter then. It wouldn't, there wouldn't be any concern about it.
Potentially, yeah.
I just don't see the point of doing this when we're working through an assumption and we're working on good faith trying to figure this out. This isn't a corporate merger. This is two entities working to move together, just like the fire department did.
Yeah, the sense of the good faith with the ordinance and how it was passed, there's concern, and certainly there's concern in our employee base. But again, I welcome the dialogue. I think it's helpful and it's healthy to be able to vet that out. I'd welcome any recommendations you might have. But I think the dialogue's great.
if you don't mind me interjecting, the RCW is 35.13A.090, and it doesn't have to do with the union representation, but it's all full-time employees that deal with the operations of the district.
Which, generally speaking, are your unionized employees, right?
Yeah, depending on your definition of the operations, whether the administration of the district is involved in operations or not is not clear in the RCW.
And I think the Boss Adams report also questions that what would be potential or people that operate and whether or not the city would have to keep them after close.
Okay. I'm gonna share a commentary just for a minute because Kevin, you brought up this cooperation and the feeling of the district and so forth. One thing that doesn't help, in my opinion, is when we get the ratepayers get a newsletter, and we got this little section on the back. Did you know? And I mean, I don't think you see the city doing this type of stuff. So Dan, you and I had a conversation about this in December. I think this needs to stop. as far as this kind of constant drum beating of the inadequacy of the city. We're not perfect. You folks aren't perfect, but this stuff doesn't help anybody. And so I would ask that it stop and let's move forward, okay? Because this stuff about, saving the city and so forth, what good to do? None of us were here when that took place. None of us. Doesn't do any good to talk about it. It's past history. Water under the bridge. Water out of the outfall. So could we please stop this?
Oh, no, well, Gary, I do appreciate you bringing it up. I mean, there's a part of it, but I think that while I may not have been an elected, I was with the city. I think I was probably the only one on this call right here. Well, maybe some of our employees were with the district, but I was a part of the city. I know a lot of the history behind it, and I don't want to always revisit the history. I was there with each of those council members over time, because part of the job that I had held when I was part of the police association was to work with them. Now, I get it. I mean, sometimes, yes, we do need to move past some of these things, and we need to be more cooperative in some of the stuff. I think that both sides have to come together and be able to do that. And that's something I know that you and I had talked about. You feel surprised with the newsletter. We feel surprised by unannounced ordinance, that nobody's having the courtesy to pick up the phone and talk. I've been part of this board now for going over 2.5 years, and I think I have never received a phone call from any of the utility members. I've been the one that's been reaching out. And so I think it works both ways. We do need to get to a certain point that we're beyond that. I think that sometimes we talk about this unification process, and we don't like what we're dealing with as far as the employee retention is that, but it doesn't feel like this is a two-way street all of a sudden. It's kind of like, well, we're doing this, by the way, and you guys are just going to have to come along with us. That's how we do feel about it.
Well, that's how we felt about this for the last 2 years. You guys have done several things, hired plant managers and done all these things without the utility commission, having any say whatsoever. And that's totally inappropriate. And by you putting that stuff out there, I mean, we can bring up a bunch of stuff that's derogatory about the sewer district, but have we been? No, but you guys are publishing stuff out there. I don't think that's helpful. And I think if there was a lot more cooperation in the past 2 years, I don't think we would have done what we had to do to move forward here now.
Marcus, every time you reference the agreement, I think you haven't read it, because we've talked about that plant manager before, and on that call, we went back and forth, and you guys couldn't even decide what level of person you wanted to have a say in. It was, so anyway, it was a circular argument. So
it was a circular argument in your mind, not in ours.
I can go back and quote you the minutes if you'd like, but
Gary,
anyway,
did you have a feeling did you feel like we had a say in it? Because I think we all felt like we had a say in it.
Let's move forward, please.
Yeah, before we delve into it, so if there's nothing else that we have on the employee retention, if there's more that we need to bring back, let's bring it back and have more discussion. I know that we're going on 5 o'clock here, and I don't know where obviously the council, you folks have a meeting tonight, and you have pre-planning and talking before you get to that point. So I don't know if we need to be able to hit some of the other items, or if we want to make this a carryover, because obviously we had a very ambitious agenda. And as usual, our ambitions sometimes far exceed our time limits.
The only thing I would add to the employee retention, as well as probably some of these other issues, I think Gene and Mariah need to sit down and start working this stuff out.
Yeah, and from my standpoint, I would just like to say, as we move forward with the assumption, we value the sewer district employees, and we see them as part of the team. So we'll just move forward with them.
Yeah, I think the assumption's in question. So if there's a recommendation that the building committee has or wants to make, I think we should make it now, since we've talked about it at 2 different meetings. So
right. Okay, we'll just keep moving forward.
Okay.
Let's keep moving forward with the agenda.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item process needs 4.20. There was two things on there. One was the lake level, which was the first item, and the second was the co-location of one-stop shop.
Yeah, so the lake level, I hope you all have noticed that the lake level's gone down quite a bit. We were able to get an emergency permit for Fish and Wildlife, get in there. I think we started last week, maybe the week before, cleared out the debris from Catherine Creek up to the Main Street, 20th Street Northeast Bridge. And we were able to clear all that debris out. We're gauging about 22% more flow out of the lake right now. And we've got more debris cleanup to get done. We'll finish up going all the way up to the weir, as well as doing some ditch work behind Jay's. So I think it's made a great improvement on the lake level. And then we'll apply for a regular maintenance permit that will allow us to get in there every fish window for the next 5 years, to include this fish window coming up. It will let us get in and get some of the sediment out, which will increase flow even more.
That's great work. I appreciate that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, staff did a great job on it. Shannon and John and Eric worked it and made miracles happen.
Well
It
done.
looks really great. The water looks really clear and the banks look great. I can't commend the Lake Stevens team on that enough. That looks really great. I think the mayor had said that it looks like it hadn't been done in 60 years plus, probably. So
our excavator was pulling out balls of sawdust. So just think about how long that's been since there was sawdust in that outflow.
Well, Gary, my dad said that he recalls your dad being involved the last time it was cleaned out, just as a point of reference. I don't know if that's true or not, but
He didn't have a permit, though.
that's why it was so well flowing. See?
Excellent. How about the co-location one-stop shop? What do we have anything on that? I guess that could include, I know we had discussions about the district's office, but also about the civic center that the city was looking for at the top of Chapel Hill location.
I would suggest that Gina and Mariah have this topic for discussion and, discuss it administratively.
Okay. We will let the staff work on that. So let's go ahead and transition down to E, which is going to be the transfer of services planning 7.8. The thing under that is going to be attorney fees spent on unification, which is the first item. The second one is internal logistics of pending merger, operating systems, accounting processes, housing, staff, etc.
I kind of could take off on what Gary said. I think that's more along the lines of Mariah and Jean to work through. I don't think the electeds need to get in the way of that. I think they have a better scope around what's best to move forward with there.
Okay. Project review. Item 6, 4.20, comprehensive sewer plan, city comprehensive plan, 6.7.9. Any updates that the electeds need to know?
Just that district staff is working with city staff, and we should have our first deliverable sometime in February that we can share with the utility committee.
Perfect. Any questions by the utility committee? Seeing nobody raise their hand or speak, we will move on down. Let's go down to project review, which is capital projects is what under that B, which is Costco Civic Center, Hartford Industrial Area, transfer of old wastewater treatment plant, and decamp facility update.
I guess we're assuming within your comprehensive plan, Jonathan, you're still including the Hartford industrial area. You're not.
Yeah, it's been identified in the past, I think since 2007. But yeah, there's a tighter look at that as well. And Mariah and I are putting together some thoughts that we'll be able to present to the city council on the 4th of February, I believe.
Okay. Brett, do you want to highlight what you talked about recently, about trying to formulate kind of phase 2 of downtown industrial job center? You're muted.
I got kicked out or something, so I had to come back in. So y'all talked about the comprehensive plan. One of the things we're going to do next week, one of my goals as mayor is that we revamp the industrial areas, the Hartford area and the Machias area. And so next week, we're going to do some ideation with just high level ideation on what could it look like infrastructure wise, what could it look like beautification wise, what could it look like economic packages, economic ideas to bring in light manufacturing, different sorts of job packages. So we're going to be doing that next week, real high level. I think we've invited Mariah and John to that meeting, so we can have some sort of perspective on it. But again, just high level, and then start off of that, create a timeline to make sure that we're getting into grant cycles and good planning and designing before we would. I would love to try to do something next year to start revamping that Hartford and Machias area. I also want to change the name of it because no one knows what the Hartford industrial or the Machias industrial area is, and when we talk to people outside the city. So obviously changing it probably to Lake Stevens industrial area makes a lot of sense. Do some marketing with it. Those are just my ideas and concepts at this point until we have that meeting next week.
Okay, no, that sounds good. I mean, but don't forget, Hartford was a little city in the area before Lake Stevens and was formed along with the town of Ferry way up there where I think you got 127th and 92. So moving on, anything on the Costco? I know that I'd heard something that the governor has restricted any of the funding for some of the culvert activity that they are bound to deal with as a state agency, which affected some projects on State Route 9. So I know that the city had put out that Costco was coming by the end of this coming year. I just didn't know if that would have effect on that roundabout.
Yeah, so the governor has paused 2 of the projects on Highway 9 that impact us, the South Lake Stevens Highway 9 roundabout for Costco, and then as well as the Connecting Washington project at 9 and 204. I testified last week in the House Transportation Committee. I'm testifying tomorrow in the Senate Transportation Committee. And there's a lot of pressure being put on the governor to unpause these projects. There's a little bit of political wrangling going on behind the scenes for some votes. And more than likely, this stuff will be unpaused in time. But we're working it. We're keeping on it. Good news today is the final appeal of Costco was thrown out by a judge, so that is no longer a possible obstacle. So yeah, and if you haven't noticed, we are moving dirt on extending 91st south of 20th Street Southeast. So good stuff.
Is Eric on the line, our works director? He indicated today, just for the sewer district's information, that we have issued building permits for Costco. So they are still apparently, Marcus, correct me if I'm wrong, still targeting Thanksgiving for an opening.
That's my understanding. They're on.
Yeah.
They're hoping for a Thanksgiving if the window stays open for everything, and the bids are supposed to be coming back. And as far as I know, the target still is out there for Thanksgiving. That's very aggressive for me to believe, but Costco does crazy stuff. So, but as it stands right now, I think that they're supposed to start in April, if I understand correctly from the information I've gotten. So
that's correct.
Yeah, Costco is pretty good on their timelines. I have a friend who works for a company that's exclusive work for them. So they know how to build their stores. They have a timeline and they know how to reap the rewards and be able to pay that store off within a very short amount of time. So perfect. I don't know if there's any, I know that the transfer of the old wastewater treatment plant, you know, the report came back, everything seemed satisfactory to what I think the consultants were. So it's just a matter of getting that transfer done through legal. And so I'm going to assume that that'll be done through legal side. The decamp facility, I don't know if there's any updates on the decamp facility other than last I heard, they pretty much had all the concrete poured.
Hey, before we go by the wastewater treatment plant, we talked about having this done a couple times. We're going to have it done by December. We kind of got the verbal. There was some debate about whether it needed to go to council or not. Who had the next move in terms of drafting up whatever to be able to transfer it? Does somebody know exactly where we're at and who has the next move and what the timeline to get it done is?
Keen, you want to take that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've talked to the city attorney about it, and his suggestion was to hold off on doing the paperwork as it would transfer with the unification within the 90-day period that was spoken of earlier.
Here's the deal. Folks, we've been down this one for 2 years. Let's get the agreement in place to transfer it so that it doesn't get hung up in whatever direction or twists and turns around trying to do something different with the unification. That would be my request. We said we're going to have it done by December 22nd or 23rd. We voted on it in this forum, and we haven't made good on that commitment. So if we need to know what the next move is, but the answer to delay more is not an answer.
Kevin, I would tend to agree with you. I guess I would ask Gene, I mean, how much documentation does it actually take other than a quitclaim deed or warranty deed? You guys aren't willing to warrant it anyway because it's been used as a treatment facility. So can't a quitclaim deed just take care of that? And I just can't imagine it's a lengthy documented process.
The city attorney had knowledge that we were meeting today, and I let him know that if something changed through this meeting, that I would let him know immediately. So I will do that, and I don't think it's a complicated process.
Okay.
But I have this direction, I will get him on it immediately.
I appreciate it. There's one other thing related to the wastewater treatment plant. We had a gentleman, Greg Ortega, who seems to be representing EB Island Drainage District number 1. They have some interest in the old pumps that are out there. From a district's perspective, they can have them, right? But if I was about to take it over, to transfer the property, I wouldn't want to be giving some. Would it be all right if we designated someone from the district, someone from the city to work with Mr. Ortega and determine whether we can do something there for the drainage district? I understand that they're kind of on a shoestring and, hat in hand kind of thing. And if we can help them out, I'd like to, but I also want to make sure it's in lockstep with, what the city wants to do and not want those old pumps or something.
Yeah, we can do that, Kevin. Eric's the one that talked with Mr. Ortega. So absolutely, that's easy.
Okay. Great, because if we can help them, want to help them. Again, we don't want to step on anybody's toes because it's going to be your stuff. So, All right, so we'll have someone from Mariah can decide who's appropriate. We can work with. Okay, thank you.
And to answer your question on the decant, they're pouring asphalt this week, and then we're just waiting on the building. The building shows up, and I think it'll be up. I think I heard this morning, probably within 2 or 3, 4 weeks.
Perfect. No, that's nice to know. I think we'll make it in time because I think King County's cutting everybody out from using anything in their county as far as shipping. So perfect. Civic Center one, I don't know if there was anything on that, but if that's going to be at the staff level to make some decisions and give updates on that, we'll just go from there. Let's go down to development review of DEAs.
All right. Not much to update here. We've got a few projects that are nearing closeout. We've got Pellerin 2. We've got the Lake Stevens Apartments and the small short plat of Weinberg. They're all wrapping up probably by the end of next month. And otherwise, we haven't gotten any new DEA applications in the works. So.
Sorry, I muted myself instead of unmuted. So I know the Bachelor annexation is moving its way through the process. Do they expect DEA to probably come in with that? And my assumption was they were going to annex because they do want to develop. I don't know if that's sooner or later, but I don't know if that's something that may be coming in later this year.
Yeah, that annexation is in with the Boundary Review Board now. They've got about 30 days left on their review. And then right now they're still doing some preliminary feasibility design work. So we don't know if it'll turn into a project or what the magnitude will be, but yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So schedule the next meeting under 7.2. Now we do have normally under the unification agreement, there are quarterly meetings. So we do know that we have April 27th, July 27th, and August 26th, 2021. But obviously, as we are busier and more things come up, we want to be able to accommodate. So is there that need to take one into the next month, which would put us at February 23rd? And I guess I'm just trying to get a gauge from the utility members.
These are a lot of fun. I would suggest we leave the schedule where it's at, and then if something comes up, if there's something that we need to get it calendared, we can, Gene and Mariah can, I'm sure, help us find a time. But I just put those out there for now would be my suggestion.
My only thought on that would be is we do have a lot of things in the works right now. It might be who of us to be working through some of these things next month as well. Just a lot of stuff to talk about. That's all my concern is. Just don't want to wait for 3 months from now to the next quarter. But if everyone else feels differently, I just think that there's a lot to be working on here that might need another meeting. So, but
how about if Mariah and Gene maybe at the end of February could just circulate a kind of status report of how they're coming with some of these things we've talked about. Just an idea.
Yeah, we could definitely have the staff put that between if there needs to be. I mean, generally we do look at that that Tuesday at the end of the month. So if it's not in February, maybe we circle back in March. But I think if we leave it to staff, at least the city administrator and the general manager, to touch base. If they feel there's an absolute need right away, then we put it in the schedule. Otherwise, we at least know we have our quarterly meetings set aside. So
great, as long as Gene's updating our end, I'm great with that, Gene. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's see. Anything I know that we've gone over a little bit, but that's all right. We can. Anything for the good of the order before we adjourn? I know it's not on there, but if there's any last minute things that maybe anybody wants to say.
Real quick, I noticed that in the beginning of the meeting, it was mentioned that the commissioners had a meeting before this meeting.
Correct. We had an executive session meeting.
Was that announced anywhere?
So the meeting would have been published. We publish our meetings on our website now in the front of the building. So it was an executive session. No action was taken. No decisions were made.
Okay, because it's not on your calendar on the website. I was wondering.
Yeah, we make sure that staff puts it out so the public has notification. I don't know who controls the one calendar on the website, but
it is on the calendar. It says 3 p.m. executive session for potential litigation. It's on the calendar.
So if
on your website,
kind of in partnership, I guess here, and I'm going to ask the same of the city. Could we communicate directly when those meetings occur and notify us? Not that we're anything special, but same thing with our meetings. That Jean, could you make an effort to notify Mariah of any special meetings or something like that,
Certainly.
rather than just a posting on the calendar, since we don't check that every day?
And Mariah does sit in on the city staff meetings, and we go over agenda planning for all of the city council meetings and other meetings that we have coming up. So she participates in that already.
Okay.
So Mariah, I do see it on your calendar, but I don't see it under your public notices or under your agendas. But I just wanted to clarify.
Thanks for pointing it out. I'll get with the gals that post it.
Perfect.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll just, because generally our general manager or assistant general manager or any of the executive session meetings that we have, we'll make sure that we reach out and at least notify, we'll let Gene know so he can make the proper notifications through the chain for you folks, whether it's all the electeds or just the mayor, however you guys may do that. So
That'd be great. Thank you.
sure thing. So if there is nothing else, I would say we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your work, everybody. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.